All right, we are doing section, now remember what I said, we're jumping to, I'll use the mouse on this. We're jumping to chapter 10, all right? So we're skipping chapter 9, so we're going to go to 10:1. Sorry if chapter 9 was your favorite stuff. In fact, I think you'll be very happy. If you flip through chapter 9 and look at it, you're going to be very happy that we skipped chapter 9. To me, it's really not that important. You don't really, the stuff you do in chapter 9 really has no bearing on much at all that you'll learn later on. So I have no problem skipping chapter 9. Even if we weren't running low on time, towards the end of the year, I'd probably still skip chapter 9, all right? So chapter 10 is on circles. That's what we're going to be doing, okay? I've got some circles over here, and we are going to be dealing with circles. So here's a circle, and there we go. And let's make this a little bigger. Today, basically, we're just going to deal with a lot of, we'll do a couple formulas, but we're just, for the first part anyway, we're just going to deal with a lot of vocabulary kind of stuff. All right, so the first thing we're going to deal with, let's change that. Yeah, down the bottom. See how the voice goes up at the bottom? You can't see that. All right, so let's do this. Let's talk about this thing right here, that little dot in the middle. Okay, what do you think? Where do you think that is relative to the whole circle? In the middle. Okay, what's another word though? The center of the circle, and that's what we call it. Okay, I guess you could say middle, but we say center. Okay, so that right there is the center of the circle. Let's sit now, please. Come on. All right, so that's the center of the circle. All right, the center of the circle. If I drew a line from that, or a line segment from that center, anywhere on the circle. Now, if I drew a dot right here, that's on the circle. You got it? So when it's on that line, it's on the circle. If I put a dot in here, almost gave it away, what would I call that? This is in the circle. And of course, that would be where? Out of the circle or outside the circle. Okay? So this is on the circle, inside the circle, and outside the circle. So the center is obviously always in the circle. Would you agree? So that's the center. Now, if I connected a line segment from the center to any point on the circle, all right, that's going to give you the same exact distance. That means it's the center. So the center would never be out here, would it? All right, because right there to here would be a lot shorter than it would be to go out right here. So from the center all the way out is going to be the same distance. Let's get rid of all these little dots. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. All right, so that's the center of the circle. Now this line right here, this line segment, okay, it's a line segment because it starts and stops. Starts here and stops right here. Oh, by the way, let's do this before we talk about this. We name the circle. We've named a lot of things. Named angles, points, lines, line segments, rays. Remember that way back? We've named all kinds of stuff. Seems like it's been a while since we've done that kind of thing. Okay, but for a real long time, we did that for every single chapter. We're going to name this circle as well. Let's just use what they have in the book. We'll call it C. So the center, that point right there is point C. So the center is at point C. We call the circle C. This is how we do it. Just draw a circle with a little dot in the middle. That's the sign or the symbol, okay, for a circle. I know it's not that pretty, but you get the idea. All right, so that's the symbol for circle, and whatever the center is, that's what we call it. All right, so it's circle C. Pretty simple, right? Only one point, one letter. It's also what kind of a letter? It's a capital letter, right, because it's a point, right? You remember from almost day one, points are always labeled with capital letters, all right? So that's circle C. Let's do some other things with this. Let's take this. Oh, almost forgot. This is what I was going to get to, and I forgot about the naming the circle. This line segment from here to here. We've learned this before. You learned this probably back in middle school, maybe even before that. What do we call that thing from here to here? We call it the radius of the circle. All right, so that's the radius of the circle. It goes from the center to any point on the circle. So I could draw this right here. What would that be? That would be a radius as well, wouldn't it? Tell me something about each radius. They're going to be exactly the same, isn't it? That's because of the definition of a circle. The definition of a circle, actually the definition of the center of the circle would be, all right, well, listen. From the center of the circle would be from the center, and it would be the same distance to every point on the circle. Well, that distance they're talking about is the radius of the circle, okay? Let's do this. Let's take actually, let's take that right there. And I'm going to extend it to there. All right? Now, what do you think I have? Again, this is not brain surgery. You've learned this before, haven't you? I'll try to draw. You ever try to draw one of those? That's actually pretty good, isn't it? I used to practice this in college because we had to do a lot of those braces things, and I was terrible about doing those. And I remember one time, I must have had some free time or something, but I just practiced doing those over and over again. It's still, but that looks pretty good. Okay. So, all right, so he was Egyptian.
Oh, that's what I meant.
So, anyway, what do we call this thing right here? That's the diameter. Now, again, you should already know this, but there's a relationship between the diameter and the radius. What do you think that is?
Half.
Yeah, the diameter. Let's do it the other way. Let's say the radius. The radius is what?
Double.
Actually, no, that's the way I wanted to do it. Let's do this again. So the diameter is twice the radius, okay? Or if I wanted to write it the other way around, which I was going to do earlier, the radius is what? Half the diameter, or you could say what? Diameter over 2. Make sense? All right, that's pretty easy. That's a relationship you've seen before. That's really not that big of a deal. Let's do one other line in here that's not a radius, it's not a diameter, but it does touch 2 points on the circle. There's one right there. Now, that's not a it's not a diameter. Now, it does hit, look at the diameter. The diameter hits right here and right here. So it hits the circle in 2 points. The radius, does the radius hit the circle at 2 points? Some people think this is hitting the circle. It's not, is it? This point in the middle is not. The center is not on the circle. It's in the circle. So radius only hits the circle at 1 point. Good. The diameter hits the circle at 2 points. This thing right here, whatever that's called, hits the circle at 2 points. So is it the diameter? No, the diameter has to do what? It has to hit both. It's got to hit the circle in 2 places, but it also has to do what? Let's use the word center, right? Okay, it has to go through the center of the circle. Okay, this is not the diameter. It's not a radius because it doesn't go through the center. We call this thing a chord. All right, C-H-O-R-D. It's spelled the same way as you would a musical chord, but I don't think it has anything to do with it. All right, so anyway, that's just called a chord. Pretty simple. Okay. Now the diameter technically is a chord, but it's a chord that does what? That goes through the center of the circle. Well, a chord automatically in the definition means it hits 2 points on the circle. So a diameter is just a chord that goes through the center of the circle. You got it? Is every chord a diameter? No. Is every diameter a chord? Yes. Everybody got that? Okay, good enough. All right. Let's do an example. This is on page 684 if you want to follow along. It says, it gives you a circle. Let's try to do this kind of quick here because I can only go to 10 minutes. Then I have to switch. All right, here's a circle right here. And let's make a diameter that goes through like that. And let's say that this is Q, this is V, this is T and U. I'll just use the same thing that they use in the book. And the question says QV is 8 inches. The question says, what is the diameter of circle Q? That would be easy. So look at QV. QV is the what? It's the radius, okay? So if the radius is 8, what's the diameter? 16, okay? They could also do stuff like this. They could say, what is QT equal to? With no other information, what is QT equal to?
8.
It's 8 because QT is also a what of the circle?
Radius.
It's a radius, isn't it? It goes from the center to a point on the circle. So that has to be 8. What about QU? That has to be 8 as well. All right. Now, most of the time we say, when we refer to the radius, we would call this QV and QT or QU. Somebody asked in the other class, could you call it TQ or VQ? I guess you could. I don't think there's any rule that says you can't do that. But for the most part, to be consistent with this, we go QV. Start with the center, go to a point on the circle itself. Everybody okay with that? All right. Let's stop this one. We'll call this part 1, and then we'll go to part 2.